Took motherfuckers long enough to be able to bypass Sony's security for the Vita, but it's finally happened. The PlayStation Vita has in fact been hacked. So that means that motherfuckers who have been ignoring this right here for the past, I don't even know how long, even though most of the time I saw this shit was only $30, will be getting some use out of it. The PlayStation Vita being hacked to allow for emulation to bypass some of the stupid bullshit of an actual whitelist of games that are not compatible for whatever reason, namely for this fucker right here, because this is a little micro console. Take everything from the Vita, shove it inside of here, hook it up to your TV, there you go. I've loved the shit out of this ever since it came into being, but the idea that there was games restricted on it made no sense at all. Like, why do you have games that are not compatible, but they work just fine with it? Makes no sense. Sony themselves never came forward about it, and it was even more frustrating and more bewildering because sometimes this was done just by the region. So, you know, Sony Computer Entertainment America, then Europe, Japan, all that shit. Depending on what region you're in, will also depend on what titles are made available. Shit was asinine and fucking stupid. But this made me start thinking about this beast right here, the fucking PSP. I've always loved the PSP. Sure, back whenever it was out, it was the only thing, you know, to compete against Nintendo. People kind of shat on it. Oh man, it's not a fucking Nintendo, so I mean, who the hell's going to ever beat Nintendo? But as time progressed, it ended up gaining a lot of steam, and it's got so many good fucking titles on it. But you want to know what it really does have? A feather to its cap is the fact that it is an emulation fucking machine. And sure, nowadays, we're able to go and reach into our pockets, go and bust out of a fucking smartphone that's capable of running virtually anything and everything out there. And God forbid if you ever decide to plunk down some cash on some shit like the NVIDIA Shield, for example. That thing is a fucking monster. I'm talking about that one with the controller and the screen and all that shit. That's a fucking badass right there. But the PSP was doing that shit well before that, and everything was so fucking nice. The idea of having some Neo Geo classics on there, some MAME games, SNES, NES, Game Boy Advance, and actual backups of PS1 games, PSP games, you fucking name it, it's amazing. Now, the Vita, they've already said right now that the exploit for all of this shit doesn't run, like, pirated games or anything like that. So anybody who's just thinking to themselves, oh man, there is a lot of really rare and hard to find Vita games out there, because there are. Vita collecting is a big fucking thing I noticed. But HENkaku, which is the name of like all this shit right now, that doesn't allow you to go and play that kind of shit. Now, they have had a version of Doom up and running on it. They have been able to get a Super Nintendo emulator up and running off of it, albeit not the Super Effects games. Those are usually the hardest ones to go and emulate, but this is a slow trickle. Eventually this is going to be a motherfucking digital tsunami coming its way, and the Vita will allow you to go and do everything and anything that you've been doing on other devices, but I've always wanted it for the Vita. The Vita has so much fucking horsepower behind it, it actually feels decent in the hands because 2 analog sticks, you got the shoulder buttons up top, you have a touch panel on the front and on the back, so you've got a shit ton of options. I've liked that. I always say, if you're going to get one, the newer versions, you know, granted they're out there and they're available and shit, but I go with the OG PlayStation Vita, the OLED screen, and it just feels sturdier and more solid. I don't know, I just always preferred that one, because when I had my hands on the newer one, it's like, just not as good. But I've always been one of those fucking proud few, literally just few, out there have been saying, no, the Vita's pretty fucking good, and it's gotten plenty of PlayStation 3 games that were ported to it. If you got shit on PSN, it's really fucking awesome. Hell, you're able to get the entire Persona collection on there. That alone made it worth, like, the money to go and pick that shit up, because, I mean, that's JRPG goodness. Motherfuckers can't go and argue that kind of shit. But I look forward to see what they could do with this. I mean, I think about, for example, this could run DS and 3DS games because of the touchscreen that's on it. So that has me really interested right there. Also makes me kind of curious if there's any way that they can get games from the actual mobile market, things that typically run on like Android or iOS, and then port them over to that. I've seen some of that shit running on all sorts of different devices out there, on PC, on Linux, and all that other different shit, so it'd be kind of neat to see it running on the Vita, assuming that they can go and get something that's just, like, able to run this shit without it getting all fucked up. But I'm fucking stoked. I mean, they had Doom running on the Vita. And granted, you know, it's like, well, I mean, that's not all that big of a fucking deal. But this is progress. Keep in mind, the Vita's been out for a while, and the idea that they finally cracked this and they breached this shit, and they're working on it right now. All you gotta do is hit up a website, so literally go inside the Vita to the browser, have the latest firmware, and go and hit that shit up. And you already know that Sony is gonna be hot on the heels of this kind of shit and making updates all the time. But while they're working on it, trust me, everybody else is working right along with them to make sure that this shit is working. And to me, I don't see it as a big deal. Sony would only have to sweat it if this was going to allow people to play their own games, their current new batch of games. But if you're going back and just like emulating a bunch of old shit that you can't get by any other means, let alone you're able to bypass this fucking whitelist, if anything, this should be a wake-up call to Sony. Like, why the fuck do you have the PlayStation TV with a large library of games and then a separate library of games that just can't be played for no reason at all? For no reason! Oh, Futurama. But that shit to me is just fucking asinine. But it does make the Vita TV a lot more desirable. And, you know, again, I've been telling motherfuckers, I'm like, oh, go and pick this shit up. But seeing the titles out there that aren't compatible with it, yeah, it's pretty fucking annoying. But it is a small-ass console. You just get a PlayStation 3 controller or a PlayStation 4 controller and go and play that shit. And then you got a catalog of titles out there, because I know plenty of people, like my friends, tons of motherfuckers that I know in general, that just don't like handhelds. But for somebody like me, like, right now, I'm getting ready to go on a big-ass road trip. And road trip, you know what I'm taking with me? My 3DS and my PlayStation Vita. Mainly my PlayStation Vita. My 3DS is a backup so I can go and play my Phoenix Wright games. I play those a lot. I don't know why. I really enjoy playing the living shit out of them. I played through every single one of those games more than once. Yeah, I just keep going back to them. I don't know, don't ask me. Plus, I'm still cranking through Final Fantasy X. Trying to do everything in that game for a Platinum Trophy is absolutely fucking mind-numbing. Just, holy shit. And there is gonna be no way that I'm gonna be able to fucking achieve it, because I missed one of the fucking Albed spheres, and I'm just like, motherfucker. But I'd like to go and get the other shit on there. It's a game that I'd like to put enough time into. But anyway, talking about all that shit, the Vita's hacked. This is fantastic. This is really good news. I just want to see what else they'd be able to go and offer with this. You know, I would like to see PSP games on there. Just with that OLED screen, you have no idea. It makes things look so fucking crisp, so clear, so damn nice. And the idea of all sorts of different games out there being compatible with it. Like, what if they managed to get a Dolphin emulator up and running on this shit, and we were playing GameCube games on the fucking Vita? An actual portable GameCube. If they could get the Dreamcast emulator up to snuff, I'm talking like 100%, because that still has some snags here and there, which I always found to be kind of perplexing and surprising. But still, and since the Sega Saturn has officially been cracked, which I need to make a video about that, but just imagine if they got all that shit and made it compatible, just fuck. Hell, even the idea that this is a portable SNES and PlayStation 1, just combine that shit together, that right there makes it worth it alone, at least to somebody like me, because I love this shit so very much. Anyway, this is AlphaOmegaSin, as always, nerds, and gamers game the fuck on.